Hey there, Emma here, and in 2023 I hosted a painting challenge called Dogtober where we painted a different dog breed every day of the month. You may have seen some of the clips that I posted on Shorts at the time, just showing like a few little clips from each painting, but I've decided to go and pull out the real-time footage and share them this year so you can follow along if you'd like to. A couple of disclaimers/explainers. The point of the challenge for me was that I wanted to try and loosen up. I'm a realistic portrait artist, and so I gave myself a smaller size to work with as well as a time frame. I'm painting on roughly about A6 size paper, which is pretty small. In terms of measurements, that's like roughly 10.5 centimeters by 14.8 centimeters or 4.1 by 5.8 inches. And I also tried to set myself a time limit of about 15 minutes. I really wanted to challenge myself to loosen up, but you can approach this any way you like. Maybe you'll do it in a different medium or a certain color palette. The options are endless, totally up to you, but you're more than welcome to follow along, and these are kind of like mini tutorials. I do want to point out though that as this was unusual for me and a challenge to me, not all of them are that good. I really struggled in the beginning to start loosening up, and particularly struggled with the long-haired dogs. But you know, it's an adventure and you'll see me progress through the month and learn a lot. If you want to grab the outline sketches, I have put all 31 sketches into a document, a PDF that you can download from my website. I will link that in the description. You'll just need to pop your email address in, which will sign you up to my mailing list, but then you'll get the document with all 31 outline sketches, roughly about the same size that I'm painting. You're more than welcome to print them, trace them, size them up or down if you need to. I'll be working with my usual set of supplies and mixing colors as well, but I will talk you through the process as we go. Let's jump in. Day 22 of Dogtober, and we're painting a keeshond. Now, this to me just looks more like a bear in the end. So look, I was upfront at the start of the challenge and I said I really struggled with the long furred dogs, painting them loosely. This is a good example of that, but you know, tomorrow's one is a Pomeranian and I think I did a much better job. So that's always there for the bright side. We are going to get started though with this cute little fluffy puppy. So I go in to start with a wet on wet layer. So I'm wetting down the dog, I'm excluding the eyes, and we're going to paint a light wash of brown over this. So I've got some on the palette, but if you need to mix that from scratch, my go-to is orange, yellow and red, and then add a little bit of blue. Those two colors sit opposite each other on the color wheel and will cancel each other out and give you some beautiful browns. If you end up with something that looks more like a dark grey black colour, you've just gone a bit too far by putting too much blue in there and you might need to start again. But we have wet the dog down now and we're going to put a light wash of colour. So I had really good intentions. I was like, look, I'm not going to go too crazy. Just put a light wash of brown over it. Then we'll flick a few strokes of fur out to the side. But it just didn't work out that way. And I think my mistake with this one was just too many visible brush strokes. And for these long furred dogs, I think I really needed to lean a little bit more into just some wet on wet. So I'm popping some darker brown now around the kind of outsides of the face, because a lot of the center of the face is going to be covered up by the dark markings. So I'm just trying to put this on like the cheek area that's still going to stick out at the end. Just roughly inviting that out to the side. So no detailed strokes of fur or anything out to the edges at this point, just big fluffy chunks. I'm circling this around the eyes as well and taking that across the top of the head between the ears. We're going to paint the ears in quite dark too on a dry layer, and just dragging this colour down the side of the face and also on like its little mouth area, but I then go and lift that up. We have to add that back in later, so you can leave it there if you want. But that is our initial layer. Good intentions, we started well. Drying that all off, and this is where I go a little crazy. So I've erased my border because we've got a very light edge and I could see the pencil lines and I don't need them there anymore. And now I'm going to dip into my black colour. So if you need to see mixing examples, there's lots of videos throughout the month where you'll see me mix the colours from scratch, but because I was painting them all in a row, it just made sense to reuse my puddles. So to get a colour like this, I mix the three primary colours together basically. You can do the orange and blue technique and just keep adding blue. Mine always turns a bit green, so I just keep cancelling that out with the opposite red. Or you can just have a go of putting the three primary colours together at the same time with equal proportions, mix it all together and see what you get. We are starting off with the ears, so I'm going around the edge of the ear and then flicking some strokes of fur in towards the head. I'm not thinking about painting every single stroke of fur in while I do this. I'm just thinking, how do we roughly quickly get this in while having the impression that there's some lighter fur on the face that is sticking up in front of the ear. We're basically negatively painting some of that lighter fur in. While I'm there, I'm also roughly doing some on the edge of the ear, and that's going to stick out to the side. We are going to dip into some more colour and do the same thing on the opposite side, just noting that this dog's got its face tilted on a basically 90-degree angle, and this ear is not going to look exactly the same. There should be more fur sticking up in front of this ear, and we should see less of it. That's exactly what I'm doing here. I've left a much bigger space there and lots more negatively painted fur in. We're just kind of gently tucking it in the back there. So simultaneously flicking strokes in to negatively paint the pale fur, while also flicking a couple out into the background to be just the black fur. Dabbing the excess moisture off my brush and then doing a couple more strokes there. Same on the left. And then we're going to start to take that across the top of the head. And this is part one of where I just lost the plot and really ruined that beautiful soft background, I think anyway. So flicking some strokes of fur up to the top of the head while bringing it down towards the snout and creating this like really intense dark marking around the face, around the eyes. So flicking, dragging that down, and we leave like a ring around the eyes as well. And that does look quite funny for most of the painting, to be honest. But we are going to gently come around the eyes, and then we are going to just leave a small ring around them with the pale colour from the initial wet on wet background. And so while I'm doing this, I'm also trying to think about the hair growth pattern on the dog and then how I'm holding my brush, because I don't want to be doing a bunch of horizontal strokes here across the top of the head, or we're really going to flatten the piece. So I was thinking, okay, while I'm painting them in, I better flick them out to the side and follow the natural hair growth pattern of the dog. It's not too important on the snout where the fur is so short. I've just kind of painted that directly on, but in those long fur areas, you really want to think about which way it actually grows out of the dog and how it sits on their face. But I'm wrapping this colour around the snout now, so we're going to exclude the very tip of the mouth, but we're going to paint all around that, painting around the nose, and then taking it further at this point on the left. We can see more of the left side of the dog's face. So going around that eye there, pulling the marking out like a big winged eyeliner, and then just very carefully filling in the face there. Thinking about the hair growth as well, flicking it downwards like the fur would be hanging. And just curving that around the bottom of the mouth. And just going very lightly at this point. I'm scared. It's looking really high contrast and freaky. I'm not sure where it's going at this point. So a bit more colour down there. Just a bit rough as we get down to the bottom, and water and spreading that out, because I'm just kind of fading the bottom of the painting out at this point. Doesn't matter if all the fur strokes aren't visible. Dipping into some more colour now, and we are going to do the opposite side of the face. So again, just pulling my brush towards me now with those strokes of fur, because that's the direction they'd be coming out from on that side of the face. Very carefully going around the eye. And just remember, this eye is further away from us. It can be a bit smaller, and that's fine. So taking the marking a little closer around that one because it is smaller. And again, just pulling its little winged eyeliner down to the side. Lots of furry flicky strokes. Going down the center of the head again, deepening that all up. It's looking a bit spooky at this point, but we'll see what we can do. Dipping into some more brown colour now, dabbing the excess, and I think let's just do more dry brushing. What could go wrong? So I decided with this brown to go in and fill the gaps between the black markings because the contrast was just simply too high and looking weird. So One could argue that the initial layer was a complete waste of time, but I do try and fade the edges out here, which I do think looks quite nice. So I've got some visible fur strokes close to the animal, closer to the eye, lots of gaps in between the fur, and then we fade it outwards to the edge and have that looking a bit softer. So similar thing on the far side, except not bothering to have too many strokes visible because it's all further away and a bit more hidden on that side. But really just trying to add some more brown to this and match up the contrast a little bit more. It was just looking way too pale in those areas. A little bit of black on my brush and just sketching in the mouth and the nostrils. Most of the tutorials this month, I have not done the nostrils with our own mixed colour. I've been using Mars Black, but you know what, just doing something different this time. Getting some more brown on my brush. I'm literally just collecting leftover scraggly bits from my palette. And before I stop to dry this off, I think, you know what, let's just paint the eyes in, because why not? It's just one less thing we have to stop and dry off. So dipping into the colour with just a bit more of a smaller brush. And popping the eye in, starting on the right, and just remembering, like, don't fill that whole gap in. There is supposed to be a ring around these eyes. It is going to make it look even weirder for the moment, but we just have to just hang in there. Popping this eye shape in on the left as well. And drying that all off. Dipping into some dark brown now. I've kind of mixed it in a little bit with my pre-made black, not my pre-made black, my mixed black. I'm just going straight over those eyes. Into more of the black colour now. And I'm just going to paint the little snoot in. Now that we've already got our nostrils in, we can pop this in. So concentrating that colour down the bottom of the nose and bringing it to a V, and then fading it upwards with some water, and also adding a watery colour to the bottom part of the mouth as well. And a little bit around the top lips, if you will, if dogs have lips. They do in my tutorials. And just carrying that colour to the edges of that shape with water. Grabbing some blue. I've run out of punchy colour now. Adding some red, so we've got purple. And then adding some yellow to neutralise that. It's looking green, so adding the opposite red. Adding blue to darken it. Adding more red to bring it back to a purpley deep colour. And there we go, we've got more of our mixed black colour. Dabbing the excess off my brush. And I'm going to just deepen up the fur down the centre of the face. Don't ask me why. The last thing I needed to do was more contrast. But just deepening up the centre of the marking running down the face. And just kind of dragging that down along the inner eyes, leaving it a bit lighter on the top of the nose, the snout, but deepening underneath the eyes. Same on the other side. And a little bit under the chin as well, flicking some more strokes of fur back up to that chin. It's looking a bit square at the moment, squared off, all my very little strokes there. But just trying to blend that out a little bit more. A little bit more colour on the right ear, blending that in a little bit more. I'm going to start taking some colour around the eyes now. So using this black colour to kind of outline the brown. It's still looking very strange in there, but that's okay. Rinsing off, dabbing off, dipping into some brown. So taking that brown under the eye, we're going to reduce the contrast in this area around both of those eyes, a little lighter at the top. Also going to do another layer on the nose. So again, just popping the colour right down the bottom into a little V shape, then spreading it around the top with water, drying that all off. We're going to do the eye highlights now before we continue to fiddle with the fur. So dipping into some white on my 3/0 detail brush, and let's go into the eyes. Just going to pop a little highlight there towards the inner left of the right eye. Another one next to it. Then on this left eye, big one there with a tiny little dot on the inner side, and the smallest of little crescent-shaped highlights on the bottom. Looking a bit cuter now. Dipping back into some of this black colour, dabbing the excess off, and I'm just trying to, again, reduce the contrast that I've seemed to have created with all the black. It's just not blending in that much for me and looking too much like a mask. So I'm taking some dry brush strokes and just kind of creating a transition colour between the brown and the black markings on the fur. I'm going to deepen up the eyes as well and try and match that up with a little bit more of the colour that I was just pushing off to the side. And that's looking a little bit better. We've got some black on the brush now. And I'm also just going to add that in around the eyes too. Just try and deepen them up a little bit more. And the marking, we lost the marking and the winged eyeliner and all that. So going and popping that back in and emphasizing that. Just fussing and fiddling at this point, reducing the outline around the eyes, shaping the snout a little bit more as well. Deepening up the rest of the black fur, mixing that in with a little bit of brown and again popping like this transition colour in. So you know what, we still do see the wet on wet layer poking through at the very end on the edges there, but we cover up a lot of it as well. Dipping into more brown, I'm going to deepen the snoot because this is looking a little bit out of place now. So adding some colour on the top lips question mark of the dog. Into some more brown, dabbing off the excess and just continuing to put some flicky furry strokes in. Just way too much detail, I think, for this tiny little portrait. I've blended out a couple of those at the edges so it's not so intense looking. Then we are going to go back into the 3/0 brush and grab some white and do a little bit of highlighting on the nose. So teensy tiny little bit under the nostril on the left. A little bit of a highlight on the top right of the nose. Rinsing off, dabbing off, and then I'm going to, with the same small brush, dip into the black. And here I'm just really kind of deepening up the eye. I'm not painting a pupil in per se, but I am just trying to deepen up around the white highlight to make it pop a little bit more. But that is our keeshond. I hope you enjoyed this one and stay tuned for the Pomeranian, which I think is better. I'll see you then.